This week on Eye on the Currents.
Yeah, just coming down this hill, I mean, to me it's quite obviously a gully here, and there should be an exclusion zone where no logging is allowed, and yet we see a number of trees that have been logged that are right inside the gully, to my mind. There's 1, 2, 3 there. And what it's done in opening up the canopy, I no doubt that the camera will pick up the speakers will pick up the bell miners in the background. There's an awful lot of canopy gone from this particular section, and presumably more to go when they come in and log the rest of this gully, which isn't mapped. Yes, that stump there, I mean, that's right in the middle of the gully.
That'd be one of the biggest tallow woods that they've actually taken out of this forest over the last couple of months.
It is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's most of the other timber they're taking out, so about half that size.
Well, they've left that one there because it's got a bit of a kink in it. I suppose, and they're calling that, I'm not sure what they're calling that.
That's probably a seed tree.
Seed tree, yeah. Okay, well it's half the volume of that.
They want to grow that one on for the future. This tree is a very large tallowood tree. It's been cut down for very dubious reasons. It's damaged a whole lot of other younger trees on its way over, and it's an issue that I feel very strongly about. That this is not sustainable. This is not sustaining our wildlife habitat at all.
No, definitely no way could you describe this as ecologically sustainable. They've just cut it down and left it. They've used nothing of it. We have threatened species and a whole range of wildlife that are going extinct because of loss of habitat, and here we are destroying it wantonly, and for no other reason. That particular tree, it's quite clear from the bark on the top of the tree there that it is dead, or part of it is dead. Any soil logger would know that straight away as soon as he looked at the tree. In falling, it's damaged a whole mass of other trees there, several blue gums that have been stripped of branches, and even the crowns have been taken off them. This is beyond belief. It's really beyond belief.
Yeah. And this tree's 30 metres from old growth protected high conservation forest, where in 1998 Forest New South Wales took out a humongous amount of these habitat trees to beat the IFOA and the RFA legislation.
And they're still at it.
And they're still at it. They're still doing it despite the legislation. And for some reason, the government, the Department of Environment and politicians just aren't aware of what's going on the ground.
They refuse to believe it.
I really invite anybody who's interested at all in the protection of habitat for native species to come and have a look at this logging operation, which Forest New South Wales tells us is sustainable, certified sustainable, and a bit of a look at it on the ground will show that it's about changing the forest structure to a degree that 50% of the wildlife is not going to be able to live here anymore.
Absolutely, and look at, just to compound the whole thing, we're in the middle of a rainy season. They know that they're not allowed to log on steep slopes because of the problem, and we've had a lot of rain, which is quite clear from the surroundings here. And that slope has got to be close to the limit. It was pretty difficult to walk up, to be honest. I haven't got a machine to measure it, but I'll guarantee it's more than that 25 degrees. Yeah, this is a native vine. It's called the giant water vine, or Cissus antarctica. Once you open up the canopies and fall a few trees, you can see exactly what happens up here. It forms a dense thicket, and the bell miners absolutely love getting into this stuff, and they take over the whole habitat, and the forest will end up looking like that now The forest management or the rehabilitation that they're supposed to do and just aren't doing is just, it looks to me as though their answer to that is to spread trees around the place and dig up a bit of the ground. So, and they'll walk away from this and think they've done a great job.
It's pretty sad that it's a point that I made in my letter to Forest New South Wales about this wet forest, is that it doesn't burn, and they've come back to me in the planning operation to say they're going to use disturbance. They're actually going to pay the contractor an hourly rate to push the soil around and remove some of the heads off the ground and keep the bark off the ground so that the soil is open and eucalypt seed can come back.
Well, there you go. That's what they've done.
So that's what they've basically done here in some of the places. A lot of the places very close to drainage lines, which is the creek lines, whether they be mapped or unmapped, completely covered in head material. They're right down low in shadowy areas, so there's no chance that they'll get a burn in there anyway. It's these areas around the creek lines that are really being mismanaged badly. The mapped creek lines that they haven't even logged this time around, now that you can see them, now that you can get in there and get your camera through a gap in the trees here and there, they're just full of vines. The canopy trees have been removed. There's hardly any regeneration along the creeks, and the whole area is, as John says, the bell miners are just going to love the vine as it moves back into these areas, which is going to change the structure of this forest totally, basically.
Just looking at that rather pathetic little recruitment tree they've got there with the R written on the base there. I mean, that'll never be a recruitment tree. They're supposed to be protecting them, but I can see a number of branches that have been snapped off with their felling already. The chances of that ever becoming a habitat tree of any form is pretty remote, I would say.
Well, the fact that they're still removing the largest trees along unmapped drainage lines, and a lot of those are brush box these days, because the brush box is now the technology's improved and they now kiln dry it so that it can be used. So a lot of really ancient old brush box, not the very biggest, but the larger logs coming out of these forests are along drainage lines. And the rehabilitation or regeneration they say is going to occur, in my experience doesn't occur, because I've been mapping all these areas since 1998, and they're not getting the regeneration they claim they're going to get.
It just doesn't happen because you get the fast growing, the wattles and the vines and so on, and you're just not getting any eucalypt regeneration. And that's actually stated in their harvest plan.
Well, that's right.
That regeneration has been inhibited by a thick regrowth of wattles. It's actually stated there. So it's not as though they don't know the problem, but they continue to overlog and open up the canopies. You can see here that we've got at least, I'd say 60% of the canopies gone here. At least 60.
Oh yes, I within the whole of compartment 78, somewhere between 40 and 60%.
Yeah. Well, they said they were going to average 40 of basal cover, but the actual canopy is, I don't know what the percentage reduction is, but certainly there's less than 30% of canopy left.